Hey, all right. So part two with Miss Ashely Kent. How are you doing today, Ashely?
Good.
Cool, 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 wonderful. Um, so I guess I really wanted to start this part two out. I would love to hear from you. Um, I guess going back to 2014, because that's when you started at District Zouk, correct?
Hmm.
I'm very curious to hear how has Brazilian Zouk in the DC area, how has it changed from 2014 to where we are now in 2020, if at all?
I think the main changes is just the number of people who've gotten involved. Of course, from the beginning, we would, as I mentioned in the previous time, get together in my apartment. We'd have maybe 10 people each time, and there was some consistency, but it was a small group. And now we regularly have socials with anywhere from 50 to 150 people. So it's definitely grown a lot. And not just locally, there's been growth in the communities in other cities as well. So that's nice because when we have larger events, dancers will come down from New York or come up from Richmond or Charlottesville. So New York had Zouk before we did in DC, but those other cities in Virginia, it's developed within the last few years. So it's nice to have a bigger local community and also a larger sort of regional community of people doing this dance.
Let me ask you this real quick then. Yeah, I imagine I can attribute all of this positive change to what you're doing, but do you know why? Or is there another reason why, I guess you've had an influx of new people come in? Is there something that you could point to?
Um, so I'd say, I guess, a couple of things. I think when we started, um, we would partner with Kizomba dancers and socials a lot and dance at Kizomba events because we didn't have enough people to have our own events. And that worked out quite well for a while. In Brazil, they danced to a lot of Kizomba. And I really enjoy dancing to Kizomba music, dancing Brazilian Zouk and Lambada to Kizomba music. But Zouk has evolved within the last 5 years or so. Not that this is brand new within that time frame, but now there's a lot more pop music that's used and remixes of pop music, and I think that's attractive to people who can then dance to music and rhythms that they're used to hearing on the radio and hearing out other places. So I think in the same way that has helped sort of reinvigorate West Coast swing in the US, I think it's doing the same for Brazilian Zouk because not everyone loves kizomba music or that genre of music. So I think the musical variety has helped get more people interested. And then you have just sort of the snowball effect of people inviting their friends, and then those people inviting their friends, and the benefits of offering more classes, which we've done primarily within the last few years. So for the first several years of District Zouk, we offered 2 levels of weekly drop-in classes. Consistency was important to me from the very beginning because unless people have a consistent place to learn and to practice, then they forget what they have learned. So we've had those Monday drop-in classes now for 5.5 years, and then with a social or a practica after. But within the last 2.5 years or so, we've had other classes on other nights of the week and progressive series that people can sign up for, where they're learning with the same group of people for 6 weeks or 8 weeks. And I think that has helped grow the community a lot as well, because then people commit to learn, a certain content over some particular time period, and they get to know other people in their class over those couple of months. So that helps build both their knowledge of the dance and their relationships with other people.
Yeah, and both those things are super duper important. That not only the dance, but the community that you're involved with, very important.
Mm-hmm.
You said a bunch of things right there, but I want to say that one, I agree with what you said about the music, and as far as what I mean is that if you're able to connect with the music and you actually enjoy the music, it actually makes the dance that much more enjoyable. So I definitely
Mm-hmm.
understand that aspect. I want to ask you, I forgot how long you've been dancing Zouk now, but actually, tell me real quick, how long have you been dancing Zouk now? Brazilian
Uh,
Zouk.
a little over 7 years.
Okay, okay. Let me ask you this question then. What's what attracts it to you? Why do you like it so much? Why have you stayed with it for these past 7 years? Can you put that into words?
I think for me, the the movement and the flow of it is what I enjoy the most. I come from a background of modern dance and other types of dance, and so even from seeing it for the first time and dancing it for the first time, the the influence of contemporary and modern dance was attractive to me. And then as I got to understand it better, the connection with other people, as well, which is sort of unique in this dance.
I definitely understand that. I'm very curious. Let me ask you this, kind of like to switch it up on you then. What are some challenges that you faced in this 7 year span, and maybe in a way or maybe phrase it in a way of lessons learned?
um, Interesting question. I think that uh, to think about the community, the challenge with Zouk, perhaps more than other dances, is uh, a lot of what people get interested in about the dance is some of the more advanced technique of head movement and body movement, and so people want to do that and learn that right away, and it's not safe. Uh, so so either for leaders or followers, there's a lot of technique to learn, and you can't learn that technique without learning other foundational technique. Um, so we always have to figure out the right balance of how soon to teach those kind of movements and techniques, and how to keep people interested and like uh, not too anxious about getting there too soon. So like even if a leader knows how to lead some of those techniques, it doesn't mean that they can lead them on a beginner follow who hasn't learned how to do it properly. So I think that's one of the challenges with this dance, just by the nature of it. And then and the balance that we have found is We work in some of the body movement technique from the beginner levels. We found we can't leave that until later, because people need to understand some of that technique about how to move their body and how to relax in appropriate ways and those kinds of things, and to learn some and to insert into our teaching throughout reminders about dancing to an appropriate level of yourself and your partner, and always having the option to respond in a way that is comfortable to you. So just because a leader leads a particular movement doesn't mean the follow has to do that movement if they're not familiar with it or comfortable with it, or they don't trust their partner. So those kinds of reminders are really important. And we try to weave that in throughout our teaching, which I would say is one of the lessons that we've learned.
Um, yet again, yeah, you said a lot right there, but I agree with it, and I think for any type of dance, normally the more flashy or the more advanced moves is probably what draws a lot of people in, but you can't just jump right into that. So I definitely understand what you mean by that.
Well,
Um,
I think what's unique with Zouk is like it's actually physically dangerous. Like I agree that's true of most dances, but I think Zouk, if done improperly, can cause injury
that's so
more
true.
so
That's very true.
than many other dances. Not all dances, but some others.
No, I think you're right though. Some of the movements you'll see, and you're like, what I'm saying, you need to practice that. You can't just do that on someone unsuspecting or someone who's not trained. So I definitely understand. Um, I'm curious. I want to kind of maybe continue with this question set. So you kind of spoke on the challenges you face in the community. Does any personal challenges come to mind in your learning process of Zouk? I'm curious. In your journey to the dance to who you are today.
I think for me personally, it's always been a challenge balancing my own training and practice with my responsibilities as a teacher and organizer and everything else. And then I have never had a dance partner, so that is also challenging in a way, because I don't have someone to regularly practice with. Um, but I very much have enjoyed learning both roles, lead and follow, and dancing both roles. Um, so I think there are benefits as well to that, but it's certainly in some ways more challenging doing that on your own.
Of course, of course. I think one, I think is a testament to how good of a dancer you are, though, because one, you know how to lead and follow. That is quite spectacular skill to do. It's something impressive to do. And I think you too. You also highlight the importance for students as well as instructors to always be leading. I'm sorry, always be learning. I'm sorry, to always to never stop learning. There's always something that you can work on. I'm very curious. Have you have you been able to find that balance between teaching and still being a student?
Uh, I would say these days, especially, I focus more on organizing, because uh, I do most of the scheduling and marketing and administrative work for District Zouk as well. Um, so that takes up a lot of time and focus, and I don't then have as much time for training. And now I don't have to teach as much because we have a team of teachers, um, including several that are full-time dance teachers. So I can have them teach, which is great. And so I think the balance that I tend to find is I have gone about once a year to Brazil for different types of training. And so like that's a time where I'm away from my responsibilities here and can fully focus on learning and dancing. So this past weekend, for example, I was in Brazil, in Porto Seguro, at a Lambada festival. And I got to take some lessons and a lot of workshops, and then 5 days of parties. So that was really, really great, especially because it was mostly focused on Lambada, which is not as common in the US or really around the world as Zouk these days. But in previous years, I've also gone for trainings. So last year I went for a Zouk Needs You training with Val Clemenci and Vanessa Bonilia. And then the year before I went for the Rio Zouk Congress and the teacher training with Renata Passagna. So I have tried to do those sorts of professional development, but usually in Brazil or away from here. And when I'm here in DC, more focused on organizing.
Okay. Oh man. All right. So I want to hit a lot of points you just said. um. Oh, first off, okay, bingo. I was gonna say what you said in the beginning. You know, you're more so organizing and everything. Um, I interviewed Mr. Guy Prada. I know you know him, and he spoke about how magnificent you are in your role and how important the stuff you're doing on the back end, all the organizing you're doing, all the setting everything up. He spoke on it in our interview, and he said, every Zouk community needs Ashely Kent, and I was like, that's quite the words of praise right there. um, and so I was, after that, I guess I really want to hear about your trip to Porto Seguro. I guess what was that like for you, and how long were you there? How long were you there?
I was just there for 6 days, just for this festival, basically. It was really just 5 days in Porto Seguro, and then I had 2 days in Sao Paulo. Um, yeah.
That's awesome. And so, okay, so you say you take a trip once a year. That's really cool. I've never been to Brazil, so that's really cool. I was gonna ask you, if I'm not mistaken, um, doesn't Brazilian Zouk come from Lambada?
Yes. I'm just going to turn on this light. Uh, so yeah, Lambada came first, and
They were dancing Lambada to Caribbean Zouk music. Is that correct?
yeah, exactly. So for a while it was called Lamba Zouk, uh, and then that evolved into Brazilian Zouk, by fusing that dance with some other influences from contemporary dance and from other Brazilian partner dances. So from what I've been told, since Lambada was more circular and most other Brazilian dances were more linear, Renata Passagna and Adilio Porto, who are teaching together at Jaime Rocha's school, brought in some more linear patterns from Samba de Gafieira and from Bolero, and that then helped to make the dance easier to teach and easier for people to learn because it was more familiar, and that and she had a background in contemporary dance and other kinds of dance, and so that that came in as well. And that's how we ended up with Brazilian Zouk.
I think that's just pretty amazing. I'm just thinking about someone creating a dance. That's just very impressive. I'm curious. Have you ever heard of something called Mallorcan Zouk? Zouk?
Yeah, I've taken a few classes, a few workshops.
Okay, I actually interviewed someone back in New Orleans who was an incredible Zouk dancer. And I don't even know if I could put it into words. Would you be able to put it into words? Because from the outside looking in, it looked very similar to Zouk. I wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Can you put into words maybe how they're different or if they even are different?
I can try. So they are somewhat different. In Zouk, some of the differences are that they break down movements into really their component parts. So in Brazilian Zouk, for example, we have a pattern called bonus, which involves a traveling turn, a bachinha step, and then a free spin. And in Zouk, they would break that down into each of those different components, and they have names for each of those components. So each step or couple of steps has a specific technique and terminology, and it's more. I'm not thinking of the right word, but most movements can be done in either direction or on either side, where Brazilian Zouk is sort of one-sided. Some movements can be done in both ways, but most of the dance is in a clockwise direction. Turns are more commonly done to the left and not to the right. And in Zouk, it's more even in terms of the dance in either direction.
One thing I do remember, um, I was looking at some videos and I actually spoke with this individual, and from what I remember, it was very difficult for me to decipher who was actually leading and who was following. And I believe he told me that um, I guess a lot of the moves, either person can lead it. If that even if I'm saying it right, if that makes sense at all. But it was just a very cool dance. I thoroughly enjoyed. I thoroughly enjoyed. He was an amazing dancer. So I just want to ask you about that.
Yeah, I mean, there are some Zouk teachers in New York. So there are, and also, of course, in Spain. But I'm sure they could tell you a lot more than I can about that style.
Yeah, this individual, he lived in Mallorca, Spain for maybe like a little bit less than a year training at this guy's school, man. So he was very like dedicated to it. And it was very, very cool to speak with him about
Mm-hmm.
that. Yeah. I'm curious. So tell me about your trip to Brazil recently. What was that like, please?
It was really awesome to be in Porto Seguro, dancing lambada with Brazilians and people from around the world. I had been there 5 years ago, but at that time I didn't dance lambada. I went to Berg's Congress, which is one of the top festivals for Zouk in the world, although he's not doing it anymore. So, I mean, 5 years ago I went to Berg's Congress. This time I went to the Brazuca Beach Festival, and they had some of the most influential teachers and dancers who really created this style of dance, as well as some of the top instructors who are teaching it now, and then some of the younger generation of newer dancers and instructors. So it was really cool to see the different styles, and the more old school like dancers and influences, and some of the new directions that people are taking the dance. So that was really, really awesome to have that all in one place. They also did something which I haven't seen done, although I think there are some other festivals that do it, but so each hour, most hours, there were 3 different workshops. But then at the end of each of those, they brought everyone together and they had the instructors from all the workshops do demos on one dance floor. So at most festivals, the instructors will finish their workshop by doing a recap of what they taught and a demo to show it to music for the people who took their class. But here, they would do that for everybody. So you'd get to see all of the instructors and see those different styles. And they were short demos, but it gave you enough of a sense, like 2 minutes each, of the different instructors and dancers.
That sounds really cool, and I like that idea. That sounds very innovative. Oh, let me
And
ask you
then,
this. Oh,
well, I was just going to add, the festival took place at a club that was right on the beach. They built a dance floor, like on sand, basically. And so like it wasn't the best floor by, like North American standards, but it worked quite well. It was like smooth wood. And we had challenges with rain sometimes, but they dealt with it pretty well. So anyway, there were some ways in which things weren't necessarily ideal by North American standards, except it was awesome to be like in the place where this dance came from, with the ocean right there, and outside. I mean, there was a tent covering the area and covering the dance floor, but it was open air. And then, of course, with these instructors and dancers as well.
I mean, that sounds like an amazing time, especially with when you have great instructors. 'Cause, in my opinion, when you have great instructors and you see great dancers, it can be very inspiring, and it kind of gives you that sense of like of what you can become, like potential, Like, I remember
Mm-hmm.
like the first time I went to a salsa congress. It was the first time I ever been to one, man, and I saw all these great dances, and it really was like energizing. Like, when I left, I was like, man, I really got to put in some work to get better, because it's really cool to see, like I said, great dancers, man. It's awe-inspiring, It's like, wow.
Yeah.
So I understand that. Um, Let me ask you this. I'm very curious, so you spent this time in Brazil. Is there, are there any lessons that you learned recently that maybe you could share with anybody listening?
Um, I think one of the main lessons that one of the instructors actually from Porto Seguro was focused on, tried to convey in her workshop, which was one of the last ones in this festival, was that this dance is about having fun. And yes, there's a lot of technique to it, and complicated patterns that you can learn, and all of that. But the point is to have fun. And so when you watch her dance, it's about enjoying the music, and there's a lot of aspects of it that are even in the way they describe it, like a game. Like the leader does one thing and the follower does another thing, and then the leader does something else, and they're like feeding off of each other, and of course off of the music as well. And so I think that was a really good reminder that it's about fun and expressing yourself. And so that was Mariana who was speaking about that, and then Josie, who's one of the female instructors who helped create the dance in the early days of it, she did a lot of awesome body movement in her workshops, but she would tell people she didn't want them dancing like her. She wanted them expressing themselves in whatever way felt right in their body. So, she gave several different examples and she had people practice those different examples, but she was really trying to remind people that you should be expressing yourself and not trying to copy somebody else.
I want to say that, is it safe to say that imitation is, an early stage of learning?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, you when learning a dance, you have to learn how to move your body in ways that you're probably not used to moving, unless you're already a dancer, and so so you have to start by imitating in some way. But then I think it's good even early on to be thinking in terms of self-expression, because unless you're doing a choreography or like something in which you're trying to look exactly like everybody else, then you want to think about how to do that movement but do it in a way that's true to your body and that feels good to you as well.
I definitely understand that. I definitely do. So, we were speaking about, I guess, kind of everything, but how Zouk, or how District Zouk, or Zouk in DC, has changed throughout the years. And you said one thing. You said that you actually had a team of instructors. So I'm curious, is District Zouk, is this a business for you now, or like what is this for you exactly? May I ask?
It is a business. I mean, it has to be from the beginning, but not one that I do for money. From the beginning, we've operated primarily as a nonprofit, trying to give the income, as much of the income as possible to the instructors, and
So yeah,
so
you still an entrepreneur though, still, no doubt.
yeah. So certainly we have to operate as a business, to at least try to break even. And uh, I, I actually have a master's degree in arts management, which is helpful in managing this as an organization. Um, but I think that's something that uh, a lot of artists don't necessarily think about, because a lot of people go into this because of their love for the dance or their um, interest in teaching, but there is a whole business side that is necessary, and it doesn't have to be the same person doing both sides of that. So that's why I got the degree that I got. Was I have in the past been involved in the arts, but from an administrative side. So like in this, where we are now with District Zouk, I have other people who can teach and perform and do that side of things, and then I can be more focused on the business side of running the organization and events and activities.
I understand that. Let's say in the previous interview episode, you spoke on how you were, I forgot what your position was before the plays. I know you were help setting up the plays and everything. You kind of were an advisory role. I remember you saying that. And so yeah, it sounded like you actually enjoy the back end is what it sounded like at that time. I don't know if it's still like that, but
Yeah,
okay, like you
yeah,
like
no, I
behind the
mean it's
shadows.
definitely well, I mean it's not necessarily in the shadows or anything like, people know who I am, and I like, I'm still there at the events, but it's cool to see um, all these people enjoying an event that you organized. I think I don't DJ, but I imagine it's somewhat similar to that idea of like somebody who um, sets the stage for a party, and you can see how your part of it influences the enjoyment of all the people who are present.
I'm very curious. Hmm, what? This might be a crazy question, but I guess what skill or trait do you possess that you think like makes you excel at this or like good at this? Are you know what I mean is, are you good at paying attention to like the minor details, or are you just a very organized person? Um, I don't know.
That's a hard question to answer. I think I think there are a lot of details to pay attention to for sure.
And a lot of responsibility as well, I know.
Yeah, um, yeah. I think uh, it's hard to pinpoint exactly. I think one of the things that I have as a goal for this year is to build more of a team. We do have a team of instructors, so that piece of things we have built fairly well. But on the administrative side, I'm doing most of that myself, and so I intend to build more of a team on that side as well. Because while I can do each of the pieces, if there's too much to go around, then I can't do all of it as well as I would like. So, for example, we had intended to start enrollment for our January classes yesterday, but I haven't gotten that all finished yet, so I had to postpone it until tomorrow. Um, but I think that yeah, to go back to your question, um, it's a lot of uh, paying attention to details, um, getting feedback and listening to feedback and responding to feedback from our students and participants and teachers, and then organizing all of those details and um, yeah. So it's hard. It's hard to pinpoint specific traits or skills.
I understand. This is a question that popped into my head. Um, Let me ask you this then. Speaking on District Zouk, um, what, how would you define success for District Zouk? And maybe it already is, but what, yeah, how would you define successful? What are some future maybe goals you have? Like you said one already, I know. Any others?
Uh, so I mean that one is really more of a personal and organizational goal. I think for District Zouk as a larger sort of entity, we we want to um, grow our dancers and our community in terms of numbers and quality and comfort, I would say. So, like, already we get good feedback from dancers from other cities, for example, who come here, or when our dancers go there, that our dancers are fun and comfortable to dance with. So that's of course what we want to hear. Um, there are uh, other sorts of measures. So like I imagine you've heard of the Jack and Jill competitions that are now becoming fairly common in Brazilian Zouk, sort of taken from West Coast swing, and those. competitions. Not everybody wants to participate in or participates in, but when we see dancers from DC winning those competitions, that's sort of validation that the scene is developing well, and that our dancers are developing well.
Real quick, for someone who's listening who may not know what Jack and Jill is, can you explain that, please?
Yeah, it's just a competition where people are matched randomly with another partner in the opposite role, and they dance in preliminary rounds with different partners, and they are judged for their own technique, and then in the final round, they're matched with one partner, and they dance a couple songs with that partner, and they're judged as a partnership. So it requires specific sort of training and focus, because it's more focused on how the dance looks versus how it feels, because it's judged by people who are watching it. So it's more of a sort of performance. However, they're looking for proper technique and for the ability to dance well with a random partner that you might not have danced with before. So that's why it's in some ways a measure of how well people have integrated what they've learned in learning this dance.
Yeah, yeah, that's super duper difficult because, like you said, it's a random partner, someone who you probably do not know, and you're just matched with, and you have to go out there and compete with them. So it's a very, very cool concept, a very, very cool concept. And I'm pretty sure I'm starting to see it implemented in like the some key Zumba congresses as well. So yeah, it's a very cool concept. I think it's cool. Um, how would you define success? So that's the second part of the question. I'm sorry. How would you define success for District Zouk?
I think that uh, it's hard to again measure in a sort of a quantitative way, but we do, for example, do surveys regularly of our dancers in our community and look for feedback. So if we get largely positive feedback on our classes and our events, that I consider to be successful. And then sort of like what we were mentioning earlier, if we get positive feedback from teachers and dancers who come from elsewhere and dance with our dancers and say that they're nice to dance with, then that I consider to be successful as well.
I guess yeah. So you explain this then. Yeah, building up your dance community then, trying to make create some good dancers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I understand that completely. I definitely do. I understand that. So I guess let me ask you maybe some questions specifically for dance that are just aimed to help dancers specifically. All right.
Okay.
So so what advice could you give to a beginner who feels like they're stuck in a rut, like that beginner's rut? They're not progressing.
I think I would advise them to be patient, which I know is easy to say and harder to do, but I think that there is a lot that you can do even with just the basics that you learn in a couple weeks of this of learning this dance. So like we've said earlier, people are eager to get to more intermediate and advanced concepts and material, but there's a lot of options and sort of juiciness that's possible with just the basics, and there are always further details to work on and figure out. So we encourage our students to get feedback from an instructor at any time. So we have practicas weekly, sometimes multiple times per week, which are like socials, but just with lights on. So people can feel free to work on something or get feedback, or they can dance to the music. So I would say take advantage of the opportunities to practice and to get feedback on what you're learning, and don't get discouraged. Because even with just what you've learned in less than a month of learning this dance, there's a lot that you can do and have fun with.
Okay, sure enough, sure enough. Let me ask you the continuation to that question. So, for someone who is an intermediate and they want to get to that advanced level, what does it take for them?
I think there, what we try to remind people is that really the fundamentals are what's most important. People, as I said, are eager to get to the more advanced material, but really they need to have a good foundation. And so we try to lay the groundwork for that, of course, in our foundations classes. But then as you get to an intermediate level, that's the time to go back and to work on refining your foundations again, because that then prepares you better for how to do that more intermediate advanced material. So like, how do you transfer your weight, and how should you hold your body? So those things, that those details that that are sort of too much to worry about or pay attention to when you're just trying to figure out where am I supposed to step and when am I supposed to step. But you want to keep refining that and focusing on that even as you're learning the next level of material.
Okay, I understand that. Um, when I say the word musicality, what does that mean to you?
I would say it means the way that you connect your dance with the music, um, which can be like an individual moment, or it can be a phrase or general sort of trajectory of the flow of your dance versus the music.
Any tips on ways or how to improve one's musicality?
One way is to listen to a lot of music. A lot of people come to class and then dance at class, but then don't seek out the music or listen to it. Otherwise, another way is to watch videos of some of the pros who have great musicality, to see how they connect with the music. And then there are sort of tedious but helpful ways of counting the phrases, so that you can listen for when there's going to be a phrase change, and practice connecting your movement to those changes in the music.
Okay, I understand that. And let me ask you this. Can you give me one tip that can make anyone a better dancer immediately?
I'd say for followers, focusing on enjoying your own movement, um, rather than worrying about, are you doing the right thing? Is that what the leader meant to do? Or anything like that. And it sort of connects to some of what we had talked about earlier. And for leaders, I would say focus on the follows movement, because it's easy to get in one's head about what am I going to do next, and like, oh, that's not what I meant for her to do. How do I get her to do what I meant to do? But if a leader focuses instead on sort of responding to the follows movement and focusing on how to make a dance comfortable for her, usually her, might be him, but then I think that's a way to make someone a better dancer.
Okay. No, that's awesome. That's wonderful. Um, yeah, I guess at this point, Miss Ashley, I really want to thank you so much, for taking time out here to talk to me.
Yeah, thank you for asking me.
Yeah, thank you for coming on for part two. I really appreciate it. So, real quick, um, can you tell me, what are some of your upcoming events? I guess, what do you have going on in your life, and is there anything that you would like to plug for District Zouk?
So next weekend is the Interfusion Festival in Washington, D.C. It's one
Well,
of the biggest festivals.
yeah. And so that would be today's the 11th, so the 17th, I guess, 16th through the 18th, I guess, of January.
That sounds right. Yeah. Um, so that's a big festival that includes Brazilian Zouk, but also a variety of other types of movement and other kinds of awareness as well. So I'm teaching a workshop there, and there will be Zouk parties every night, and then we have um, a our monthly Swouk parties, which are a combination of Zouk and West Coast swing. We have one of those coming up later this month, and then we have a weekender in February with Allison Sanji, who's one of our local instructors now, with his partner Christina Montoya, who's coming from California. So that's one of our other upcoming events.
Do you do you know or do you have an idea of what you will be teaching at Interfusion?
I'm teaching a workshop on uh, sort of along the lines of what we were talking about. So I forget exactly what it's called, but it's on connection and expression, basically. So how to connect well with your partner and enjoy a dance in connection with your partner and the music.
Okay, right, I understand that. Um, any chance you could give maybe for someone who is unable to attend, is there maybe like a sneak peek, anything you could give them to help?
I think basically we've already talked about a lot of the tools that I'll be focusing on there, but we will be exploring different ways to move your own body and to pay attention to how your partner responds to your movement, so that you can move well together.
All right, sure enough, sure enough. Um, and real quick, can you tell me, what is the best way for people to reach out to you to get in contact with you about, yourself or District Zouk?
Yeah. So for either myself or District Zouk, Facebook is a good way. You can message me directly or our District Zouk page, or uh, email works as well. Our email is just districtzouk@gmail.com. So people can get in touch with us any of those ways. Or any Monday, we're always at at Dance Work DuPont Circle. So anybody's always welcome.
You said every Monday. So yeah, what time on Mondays?
We have drop-in classes from 7 to 9:15, and then a practica from 9:30 to 11.
All right, nice. Every Monday. It's awesome. That's
Mm-hmm.
awesome. That's so awesome. Um, so yeah, like I said, Miss Ashley Kim, I really want to thank you so much, for taking the time to talk to me. I thoroughly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for asking me.
Of course, of course, of course. I will make sure that, when I upload this, I will put all your contact information in the details, in the description. So I got you on that.
Thanks.
Hey, no doubt, no doubt, no doubt. So yeah, real quick, right before we close this out, Miss Kent, is there any last words, anything you would like to share with the people before we wrap this up?
Uh, I would say I know there are a lot of people around the country and around the world who are starting brand new Zouk communities or trying to grow small Zouk communities. And I would say to persevere because it took us a while before we got kind of a critical mass um, and like we've talked about, just having consistent opportunities to learn and practice was what worked for us. And uh, it does pay off eventually once you put in the time and put in the work.
I believe it. I know it's so true, and I think that's life. Being consistent with it, I think that's life. You'll see you'll see the results eventually. So I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely understand that. Um, Miss Ashley, thank you so much. I think that is a wonderful way to wrap up this episode of the Two Left Feet podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no doubt, Miss Ashley. Take it easy.
All right.
Ciao.
Bye.